Good morning, grade 4. Today we are talking about writing that compares. We know that writing that compares is writing that tells how something is alike and how something is different. We compare and contrast two different things. I'm going to read for you writing that compares story, and I'm going to point out to you how it talks about how things are alike and how they are different. This is from a Time magazine a Time magazine called Time for Kids. It's written for children, and I want to read the story for you now. A dinosaur discovery. As a paleontologist, James Kirkland has examined thousands of different dinosaur bones. But even he wasn't prepared for what he saw when he was called to investigate some new fossils found near Salt Lake City, Utah. A fossil bed there held the bones of two never-before-seen species of ankylosaur. Both of the newly discovered creatures belong to a group of plant-eating dinosaurs called ankylosaur, which means fused lizards. The name comes from the heavy armor-like plates attached or fused to their heads. Some grew more than 30 feet long. These two dinosaurs were very similar animals in many respects, says Kirkland. One is an ankylosaurid. Ankylosaurids had big armored plates around their heads and a long tail with a heavy club at the end. They would swing the club tail to fight bigger animals. The other new species, the nodosaurid, was also well armed. It had spikes on its shoulders. It used to ram larger creatures, says Kirkland. These dinosaurs were built like tanks. All right, so he talks here at the beginning. He explains in the first paragraph that he was called to investigate the bones of two never-before types of ankylosaur dinosaurs. So he's comparing those two types of bones. All right, in the second paragraph, it tells us that both of the newly discovered dinosaurs, belong to a group of plant-eating dinosaurs. That means they both eat plants. Okay, so this is something that is alike, and that their names come from the armor-like plates that are attached or fused to their heads. Okay, so this is something also that is alike. They have armor-like plates on their heads, and that some of them grew more than 30 feet long. So each one of the bones that he discovered, he found grew more than 30 feet long. Okay, so this is another similarity. This paragraph talks about the things that are the same. He also goes into the third paragraph saying that they are very similar animals, but then he begins to point out some things that are different. He talks about the ankylosaurid, which has a big armor plate around the head and a long tail with a heavy club, and that he would swing it to fight. So he shows how he defended himself. Then he talks about the nodosaurid, which was also armored, but with spikes on its shoulders, and it would ram creatures. So he talks about how they fight and how they fought differently. Okay. All right, let's read another one. We have a second example of writing that compares, and it's written by a fourth grader just like you. Her name is Sarah Park. Frances Beach and Marquette Beach. So we can tell from the title that she's going to talk about two different beaches. Two beaches near my town show the difference pollution can make. So she's going to explain to us, we can tell from this first sentence, our topic sentence, how pollution affects the two different beaches. Frances Beach is near a canal. Some factories send waste directly into the canal. Marquette Beach, which is the same size as Frances Beach, is in the town of Lee. In Lee, waste from factories is strictly controlled. So she tells us that Frances Beach, which is near the canal, has waste dumped into the canal. Waste is like garbage, okay? Marquette Beach, which is the same size, she tells us that something alike about them, that they're the same size as Frances Beach, is in the town of Lee, and that the pollution is controlled there. So no pollution is dumped near Marquette Beach. There are no birds at Frances Beach. However, at Marquette Beach, seagulls and sandpipers are everywhere. So she talks about that there are no birds at Francis Beach, but at Marquette Beach, there are seagulls and sandpipers all around. So she shows that the beach that has no pollution has lots of birds, that's Marquette, and the beach that has the pollution has no birds. Okay? There are no bluefish at Francis Beach. Again, the beach with pollution, no fish. On the other hand, Marquette Beach has bluefish and many other fish. So the bluefish live at Marquette Beach where there is no pollution. In the last paragraph, she explains what she was talking about again. She sums up her paragraph, meaning that she restates or says it again what she's talking about. Pollution has made a difference in the wildlife population at Francis Beach. Nothing seems to live there, while Marquette Beach, with its strict laws about pollution, is full of life. So she tells us that Francis Beach, there's nothing living there, but at Marquette Beach, that the animals are living there with no problem, okay, because there is no pollution. All right, so she has compared for us Francis Beach and Marquette Beach and how pollution. All right, next we're going to talk about the features of writing that compares. We've done writing that compares before, and I'm sure many of you remember. We know that writing that compares tells how two things are alike and how they are different. So your writing should explain how they are the same, and it should explain how they are different. Your details and your facts have to be organized in a logical order. Remember, logical order means it makes sense. Okay, and we use compare and contrast words to point out similarities and differences. We'll look at some of those together. Now, when we were reading Dinosaur Discovery, it talks about how they are the same. They're both plant-eating dinosaurs, okay? They're called fused lizards. This is something that tells us that they are the same, both. The word both indicates to us that we are talking about the two things that we are comparing. This is a compare and contrast word. We also have to explain how things are different. He describes how one of the dinosaurs had plates around his head and had a long tail with a heavy club at the end. And then he talks about the other dinosaur that had spikes on its shoulders. So he talks about how they looked different. Okay, this is how one of the ways in which they were different. All right, logical order. Remember, we said you must write in an order that makes sense because you want your reader to be able to understand what you are trying to explain. All right, so here we have at the top, he introduces us to the two things that he's going to compare. In the first couple of sentences, he explains that they call him to Salt Lake City, Utah to compare newly found bones that no one has ever seen before. He describes where he found them when he arrived. A fossil bed there held the bones of two never-before-seen species of ankylosaur. So he tells us about the two dinosaurs. First, he talks about the two of them together. Then he talks about them differently. Okay? It's easy to understand. He uses words that help us to understand. Compare and contrast words like similar, meaning they're the same. Both, meaning we're talking about both things we're comparing. Also, meaning that there is a similarity. Other, meaning that there is something different. These words help us to understand, okay? We use these words to point out things that are alike and things that are different. All right, and that is it for our writing that compares. For today, we will be working on this all week. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.